Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a long day. I hope you guys have some energy left to have this last session with us for the evening. My name is Daniel. I've been at Unity for almost about 2 years now, and I'd like to introduce as well.
I'm Boris. I'm the lead developer of the Package Manager user experience, and I've been at Unity for 3 years now.
So before we kick off the actual presentation, just want to get a show of hands for how many people have actively tried to develop one of their own packages using the Unity Package Manager. Okay. How many people have no idea what the Package Manager is other than they've seen features that they've installed before? Okay. So we're going to kick it off with a bit of a quick overview, just to kind of go through general principles of the Package Manager, and then later on I'm going to pass it on to Boris. We're going to dive into some of the work we're currently doing now to help enable the whole package development ecosystem. So Package Manager itself kicked off about 2 years ago, and 2 major releases basically of Unity, and our vision and mission is pretty much stay the same. It's a modular and dynamic delivery system for assets, for tools, and the goal is essentially to help yourselves and us essentially extend and customize the Unity editor experience. The system itself is basically a dynamic in the sense that we push out new updates, new features, and the goal is to make it easier for you to modify and customize the needs based on your workflows and targets. Now, the package itself is a self-contained format. It's basically, you have the key components that you're required for injecting, whether it's editor-specific tools, runtime, but it also contains related samples, documentation, and test, and everything that you would need to essentially take this package and share it to another user within your studio or more broadly. Now, it all starts with your project. Your project basically contains a subfolder called Packages, and within that is a manifest. That manifest essentially dictates what packages will be loaded as explicit direct dependencies based on the name and the version of the package specified. We, for example, provide this as part of the project templates that you may have seen in the hub, for instance, where we predetermine a list of basic packages to include for a starting kind of workflow. What ends up happening next is once that dependency list is read from the manifest, we read from the registries, or depending on how the manifest is configured, which we, in the 2019 releases, have essentially allowed you to extend it beyond just the Unity hosted registries and hook it into, for example, a local or other registry using NPM through a scoped registry setup, whether it be a Git URL or a local package tar file that's sitting on one of your disks or a local network. From there, basically, once that registry is read and those dependencies are gathered, we trigger the cache download, read-only cache download, by the way, just to keep in mind. And basically that list gets cached and then stored basically for offline use or for sharing amongst other projects. Alternatively, we also have the ability to load directly from a package folder. It's not referenced in the same way through the cache, but a direct reference to the folder itself. And as we're going to get into a little bit later in this presentation, we're going to talk about the embedded or in-development package workflow. A package that's nested in your project, but can then turn into wherever you need to publish it. So some basic practices first, and I'll hand it off to Boris here quickly.
Right. So the Package Manager uses semantic versioning, and this is basically what we decided to use for changing a version. So major version is a breaking change. So if you change a major version, it means that it is going to break the old version. Minor version is just to make sure that you want to add features, and patches is just for bugs. And we do have specific features that are according to this.
Yeah, so this is something to keep in mind for later as we go through a bit more of the development flows. When, for example, you're looking at what we're shipping, our best practices are to abide by the semantic versioning rules. So major changes, major breakage, potentially breakage in your own projects or code, for example. Minor, you may have new features, but if all goes well, things will be stable, and patches, of course, are bug fixes. The next part about it is the logic. How does UPM work today within package and dependency resolution? So again, it starts with the project. Again, the project has that manifest. That manifest then pulls in dependencies. The direct dependencies in this example are A and B. They themselves, though, may have indirect dependencies on the project called C, and in this case, Z. What ends up happening, though, is package B and package C all of a sudden depend on the same package. And because of this, we have same and indirect dependencies, a version mismatch, and there's a conflict. How does Package Manager handle this conflict resolution? In today's logic, we assume basically the package closest, the indirect dependency closest to the root as the winner. So in this case, 2.01 will not actually be loaded. 2.0 will be loaded. 2.00 will be loaded instead. This is basically a way to avoid, the dependency logic stuff is basically a way to avoid potential other conflicts. And this is something, again, we'll talk about a little bit later on and where we hope to improve over time. But basically, if you do have a problem with this, and for example, it's not just a patch update, or there is that bug fix you absolutely need in 2.01, you could explicitly add that dependency into the project manifest itself as a way to override the automatic conflict resolution. So this all kinds comes together, in most use cases, you'll see the Package Manager UI. Package Manager UI is basically a list of the packages. We have a way to show more advanced options, such as previews. And the preview versus verified versus other packages essentially means preview is a product or a package, essentially, that is in beta. Potentially very early beta, so very alpha experimental stage, all the way through to being stabilized and ready to be shipped as a verified package. And fundamentally what that means is preview, please use at your own risk. Changes could be breaking throughout each update as best as possible. Just be aware of that. And then when verified comes in, we really try to hold by the stabilized, supported point of view. Dependencies, again, this will be very important through the development stage. To be able to see how a package that you're loading is depending on potentially other packages that will get indirectly loaded in the background, and then vice versa, being able to reverse look that up, which is something we'll talk about later as a future-looking piece. The other part, of course, is the filters. All packages, that, as it stands today, is everything we're hosting, and also scoped registries if you specified them in your package manifest for the project. In project is managing everything within the project that's currently installed. And the new one, which I'll jump into right now, is the My Assets workflow. And what that means is essentially we are extending the package manager to start supporting the asset store purchases that you've made to your account. This is part of our goal to unify the package experience in general in the editor into some native workflows. And so with the new My Assets filter, you'll be able to browse everything that you have purchased from your account within the package manager UI. Currently, this supports the legacy .unitypackage format, and again, we'll touch on it a bit later. We're working with the asset store team and the publishers to be able to support the new UPM format, Unity Package Manager format, moving forward. And with that, I want to pass it on to Boris to talk about, ultimately, what we'll be doing here is taking a lot of our best practices that we've done internally in authoring. And if you've tried to develop your own packages, you most likely have looked at what we've shipped and reverse engineered the best way to build your own. What we're trying to do moving forward is include an in-editor experience for authoring and publishing those packages through native UIs and hooks to publish to various targets. This is a preview package coming soon, and I'm going to pass it off to Boris to give you a quick overview of what we've done and what that means in terms of authoring from step to step.
Okay. So what we're going to see here, actually, is we're going to go through the flow. And what we decided to do is to take an old format Unity package, put it in the assets folder, and then we're going to create a new UPM package and just add all the files in the new package and prepare and publish the package. So we're going to create it, we're going to edit it, test it, validate, and eventually publish. So the first thing that we need to do is install the package development. And so, as Daniel explained, we need to choose and make sure in advance that we have preview packages, otherwise you're not going to see it in the list. But then, if you click it, in all packages, you should be able to see the package development. And simply just click on it and install it. And it's going to pop up new actions in the actions bar at the bottom. Right. So you wait, you install, and then you have few buttons that appears. So there's the develop button, which is embedding the package in your project. There's the test button to test your package, validate, which is going to validate all your package, edit, and finally publish. And there's another action that's going to be appearing in the plus, which is create package. So we're going to go through this. So when you use the plus and create a package, you can name it. Usually, you take the name you want. In our case, we're going to use CityViewer. That's the package that we had in the old format that is in the asset folder. And we're going to recreate it in the packages as a new package. All the files that you see when you create it are generated. These are from the template that we provide. So we have documentation. We have editor folder for editor scripts, the runtime scripts. We have samples. We have unit tests for editor and runtime that is created for you. Also the changelog, the package JSON file, the README, and third-party notice if you need. So next thing is you want to modify your UPM package. So essentially, instead of going in the package.json, you can go in the inspector. So if you click on the package.json file in your packages in project browser, it's going to show up the inspector with all the information that you need, the basic information. The name is already, it's going to be your organization and your package name. The display name you just entered just before when we click plus create package. Version, by default, we put 0.1 as the main first version. Of course, you can change it with time. The type, right now, for my example, it's a tool. Because it's a CityViewer, we consider it's a tool. It's the type. And you can specify the minimum Unity version and even go further to the release. So if it just worked for 1F1, for example, in 19.3, you can just go specify it there. And the description that you put here is going to be available for the users that use your package. It's going to be in the detail of the package. In this case, we're going to have a dependency on the 2D sprites. The 2D sprite is going to be installed automatically with your package, just like Daniel explained earlier. And so you just type it in here, specify a version, and once you apply, it's going to change in your package.json. The visibility in editor is usually used if it's a tool, then your package, you don't need to see the folder of your package. But if it's an asset, for example, then you want to drag your assets to the scene, then you put the visibility to true. That's the purpose of the visibility. Okay. So now we created the package. So we're going to import all the files from the old format into the new package. So the editor file scripts, we just add them. And inside, as I explained, we do put some examples. So it's obviously we need to delete them. But it's a good idea to go see because we also put the namespace properly depending on the name of your package and your organization. So you should go see in the samples what's written inside. Again, so we delete the sample. And finally, in the CityViewer, we have a scene for the users to understand the package CityViewer. So this scene should be a sample in the new package format. So we're simply going to drag and drop the simple scene in the samples in the example. So in the default package, we add one sample that is called example, in which you can add your files. And the user in the package window, they can choose and import samples that you create in your own package. So we're going to go just a bit in the detail of the sample to show you how it works really. So in this example, we have the simple scene, as I said, and to be able to show it to your users, let's go see what it looks like in the browser. So inside of the example folder, we have a sample.json file. This file contains all the information about the sample, and it lets Unity understand that this is a sample for the package. Inside, you can put the display name and the description of this sample. So you could have like 15 scenes and 15 samples in your package, and this is how you just add them into your package. Right. So, and then you replace this for a description. Now, the other thing that we add inside of the package is all the assembly definitions. I'm not going to go in details into what an assembly definition is. Basically, it's just making sure that your folder becomes a module. Did any one of you know what an assembly definition is? Good. So I don't have to go over that. So the only thing I want to go through here is that in the editor, we make sure that we have the namespace properly. And we do put the reference in the editor folder directly to the runtime so that they're linked together. And we make sure that the editor is not going to be part of the runtime. We do the same thing for the runtime. And an interesting too is the tests. So inside of the test, we make sure that everything is ready and set for using unit test using the test runner. So we make sure that Unity include tests as a defined, otherwise it's not going to compile these files. And we link them to the editor, runtime, the test runner, runtime, and test runner play mode. And we make sure that we have the NUnit framework DLL. So that's it. Now it's time to manage resource. So as we have, like in the asset folders, if you want to be able to have the runtime files, you create the resources folder and you put all your materials and textures if you want them to be available in your runtime. You can specify it in your package, so that way it's going to be available in the play mode. So that's pretty much it. Now all the package is pretty set. We have all our files. Now we're ready to test. So if we go now in the test button, it's going to run the test runner. So we have a dependency on the test runner to make sure that we can use that package. And in edit mode and in play mode, if you created your test properly as the example that we put, you can just run the test right away, and it's going to validate that your tests are passing or failing. That's pretty much for the test. Let's go on with validation. The package development validation, package development use as a dependency the package validation suite. The package validation suite is a package that we use internally to test and validate that the package makes sense before we publish it and provide it to users. So what's interesting is that you can extend the package validation yourself and put your own validation tests. So as soon as this is done, you can just click on validate, see the errors, and fix your problems, and eventually we're going to be able to publish. Once you've created everything, you test, you validate, now it's time to publish. Right now we just publish as a save file locally. And then in this example, I'm just creating a new project, and I'm going to use the package we created in this process. So I choose my tarball, and my city viewer package is going to be available with the 2D sprite by reference that is inside of my project. So, and obviously we created one sample, so you can import the project, the sample in your project, as we saw just earlier. And you can see in projects now, in assets, sample, the name of your package, which is city viewer, the version, all your samples, and all your files inside of your samples. So this is what your users are going to see for your package. Cool. That's it.
So yeah, we're not done.
No.
That's it for that part. Yeah, we went through that pretty quickly, and I guess wanted to recap a couple of key points of why we're trying to build this package to create packages. It's in hopes to essentially take, like I said earlier, some of the best practices we do internally, what we live and breathe every day as problems, just iterating and developing our tools to ship to you, bringing that to the masses, demystifying a bit of what is the complexity around Package Manager, and improving it with some UX wrappers. Naturally, you can do this all yourselves without having to use this development package within the editor. The goal is to help it also within your studios and say, you take the burden potentially off yourselves who are developing packages and enabling it, say, for your tech art team or others within the actual studio workflows to be able to contribute back to this. The important part there is, we're providing some samples and examples, but the goal is for you to be able to take what we've done, modify it to your needs. The test is obviously a great example. Those are user-defined by yourselves. We can't tell you what's the best test for your package. But enabling that and sharing it within your studio to the artists, allowing them to, say, for example, be able to run that before even trying to commit that anywhere, trying to push that back to a registry, running the validation suite to make sure that the integrity, that everything has been formatted correctly, so you don't have to worry about debugging things later. We want to try and basically make that democratize it for anyone who wants to try and author a package. And the goals, of course, is to not just make it for within your studio, but also to be able to take it and distribute it globally if you need to on the asset store, which is a part of the what's next piece. But before we really jump into the what's next, maybe it's good to just open up for some quick questions if anything we just showed is still unclear to anyone. So welcome. If you want to have a question, please come up to the mics on the second level over there, and we will happily answer them. And up front over here, we have the rest of the Package Manager Dev Lead team who can tell us a bit more details if you need to. So I see someone, anyone, any volunteers? Please step on up to the mic. Thank you.
Hi. Is there any way that I can choose which file I do not want to publish?
An individual file?
Individual file, or I don't know, a folder or something like that?
Yeah.
I have an example for it. I'm creating a tool and it creates a configuration file that the host must have.
Yeah, we actually have that as part of our internal processes as well. NPM ignore.
Oh, NPM ignore.
Yes.
Talking to my mic.
Yes. Yes, we have our own implementation of a private repository in Verdacchio using NPM, and we were working with this 2 years ago.
Got it.
So we run into a lot of troubles. So I don't know. One of the things was the configuration files that we wanted to ignore.
Got it. Yeah, so as part of the NPM standard, you can actually include an NPM ignore file to your package and state either directories, files, or a pattern that you want to exclude from your package. And when you call NPM pack, I think is what it is.
Yes.
Or when you call publish on our UI, it will actually take into account that stuff and exclude them.
Yeah.
Cool. And the last one is when you are developing a package and you want to publish something new, you have to iterate or upgrade the version, or is there any way to force to publish?
You can always erase the version you have, but the plan is to just bump, if it's a bug fix, for example, you just bump the patch number. If you add features, you should also just add
The minor.
Exactly.
Yeah. But perhaps we have a pipeline that is, for example, if we are under development, we just add a dash beta, for example, and we publish force over that version. So when we say that that is productive, for example, we just merge it with the main trunk branch, and that develop the production version. That yes must be an upgraded version.
So basically, at the end of your number, you add a
Yes.
name, right?
Yes.
Since we're using the semantic versioning right now, we do not, well, you can always put a name at the end. We use preview. Maybe, but Pascal, would you like to answer this?
What I can add.
No, come here.
So this is Pascal Lancette. He is one of the leads on the core, and that was Eric Corey before.
You need to change the
leads our CI.
version because we cache the package locally on the system of the users. And if you don't change the version, the
You
user
must
will think
clean
it's
it.
the same
Yeah.
package, but you have to change content, so you're gonna create confusion there. So
Okay.
you need to bump something. Oh, thank you. You need to
Much
bump
better.
something somewhere to make it the system know there's a new package.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Hi. So I have a little question for the thing you talk about now. Did you plan to have at least a button to, I guess, clean the local caches?
To clear the local caches.
Yeah, to clear the local caches on the UI, just so we don't have to do it every time sometimes.
We've definitely heard the request, and I guess the question, more importantly, is what issues you run into when you have to clear the caches.
Yeah,
That's really
if
what.
we have really little changes on the packages, or you want to, I know you have your own scope repository, and you have kind of third-party packages which are tied to the real version of the packages. But sometimes you have to do some local changes because the third-party packages aren't exactly prepared for the package workflow, and you have to you cannot bump the version because you want to stay on the version. The package version is, I think, is kind of confusing, but you just want to upgrade a little bit of the code to use the package in the package manager, but you don't want to bump the version because you want to have the version of the real package.
I think that goes back to what we're talking about around semantic versioning. Now, I guess there's 2 points in that. There's, if you're taking one of a package we're shipping or someone else is shipping and you need to modify it, then the best practice is there. If you're going to fork it, the namespace and the name and everything, it no longer is tied to the original if it's not something you could check back in and publish back to that same registry, for example. But bumping the version in this case, if there's some minor fixes you're doing, if say it is one of your own packages, I would highly recommend you bump the patch, right? So yeah,
That's
and ultimately flushing the cache to avoid those conflicts of versioning. Yeah, that makes sense in your use case. We do want to improve the overall user experience, and maybe I'll just quickly flash the what's next slide. Oops, wrong computer. To kind of talk about that. So yes, the better user experience in general around managing a scoped registry, how we deal with the development workflows, working better with Git. The example Boris showed, for example, is what we can publish today. We're exporting a tar file. We want to make it so it's easier for you to hook into these various registries so you can iterate quicker, things like that. But we didn't specifically call out clearing the cache as a UX piece, but we're definitely open for any feedback you have on your experience today, what you've just seen today, on where we can improve moving forward.
So my actual question now is, do you plan to somehow modify the UI manager to support bulk updates or bulk publish? Because when you have this local package registries, you're basically doing this in a bulk, and you have lots of small packages you want to bump.
Yes. And part of it, too, as well, is one of the talks, especially as we're looking at larger package files, splitting up the download and install into separate pieces, especially as we look at what asset store packages could contain. Being able to manage that not just as one-click install, where you'd go through that initial download and install process all in once. We want to split that up to make it more usable, essentially.
Hello. So I've been experimenting a bit with the package manager last week. One problem I had is the things I'm trying to make a package out of. You use some plugins, and those plugins isn't using the package manager. So I'm not really sure how I should deliver those things to other people. My best solution so far is just take all those plugins and zip them and send them over to that person.
And those are basically third-party plugins?
Yeah,
that,
so
okay.
Fmod, for instance.
Okay. Yes, unless they're explicitly created as packages, UPM packages, for example, you wouldn't be able to flag them as a dependency.
No.
Now, you could, if within the rights to do so, you could repackage them as that. Boris, you want to elaborate, maybe? Yeah.
So you could add them as a package and install them and put them as a dependency. Basically, that's a way to do this. You want to
make sure you're within the legal rights to do
Yeah,
that.
that's
though.
the
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. Yeah, it's not our call to suggest what you can or can't do, which is why, you know, when we say publishing to the asset store, that's not just for, you know, content, it's for also our partners and everyone we're working with, to make sure that we're extending our ecosystem, to make sure that it's inclusive of all the needs for your workflow.
No, so what I'm trying to figure out is like how do I. So this is like a framework that we use internally, and then I try to make it so it works between different projects, and then this framework has the dependency of let's say Fmod, and I don't know how I should be delivering this because it's not part of the package system. Fmod is not part of the package system, but it is a dependency of my package.
Yeah, that would be, in that case, if you couldn't distribute it as a package or repackage it for reasons, you would have to make it deployed across all your users differently. That's
Right.
the only thing I could see.
Yeah.
Next question, please. Do we have anyone on that mic?
Hi,
No? Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
Can we have private packages?
Private in which sense?
Because in our company we have more than 200 packages, and some of them are like internal, and we have our own UPM. And well, if we want to publish them, we would like only of people of our company to see them.
Right, so we have the scope registries for that. So in your manifest, if you specify a scope registry, it's going to use that registry internally just so that you can see it.
So today, the way I understand it, you would have to have separate registries, if I understand the question correctly, because you don't want everyone within the company to see it?
No, in other companies.
In other companies then, sorry, yeah, you just use your own scoped registry. I thought you were trying to segregate, between users in your company. So yeah, that's what we mentioned at the beginning, and that's the feature we currently support, where you can host your own package registry, an NPM-compatible package registry within your own network, and then publish your own packages there, and then set up the project manifest to read from that registry.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hello.
Sorry, I believe that, sorry, just 1 second. There was a comment.
There is a plan to use authentication of this scope registry.
There is a plan. It's currently not supported. So just to repeat the question, he was asking, is there a plan to support authentication of scoped registries? And currently we do not. But there is a plan to look into that feature because it's highly requested for the reasons I thought originally were about restricting access within your actual studio.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yes. So we use NPM repository, our own, where we publish the packages. And in this case, we could choose different version. And for example, if we use Git, it will not give us possibility to choose the version. It's always download the latest. When we don't use special tricks like tags and separate packages that already done in Package Manager. Did you plan to support in Git the same logic that you could choose by tag, I don't know, different versions or something like this?
So we have the plan to support Git to clone your package and also commit and push. As part of selecting tags, maybe we're going to support it. It's something that we have in plan, but we have to figure out exactly what's the real case that we need. Currently, the plan is to support Git as the source, so you keep your code, but then you publish to your registry. And the registry should be the one that you use for your projects, so that it's just a copy of the package.
Yeah, but now, for example, we make twice job. All our packages develop in Git, and it's okay. And after it, we need to publish separate to NPM repository. but really we could just make like release branch or something like tags and to use only Git and ignore NPM repository. So one less.
It is a request we've heard before for sure. Now, how to manage that in terms of subtrees and things like that, we need to evaluate that more and what that means for UPM specifically. I don't know if you guys want to comment. It's an internal challenge as well, for example. So we know that we need to solve it and then share that solution with everyone.
Well, the project manifest supports tags or any commit-ish, so it should work. I don't remember if you support it in the UI though.
No, we don't. That's
the limitation.
In UI by default, in Unity 2019, it's download latest, the latest commit. That's all for now.
Oh yeah, this was added in 19.2.
19.2, yeah. So if you look at our documentation online, we talk about how to specify the commit and the hash to really explicitly call out the version you want from Git. But it's a manual update to the manifest currently.
Okay. And one more question. It's not connected just to UPM. When you create a lot of packages, every package it's like a separate submodule or separate Git repository. And every time when we in Unity regenerate project, it's how to say, it's clear every namespace provider. And we need one more time to add to namespace provider, ignore the folder like packages, runtime, and other stuff. Could we make something like editor settings where we could paste the folders that we always need ignore in namespace?
Ignore the namespace.
Yeah, because now we have only one thing in Unity configuration, it's default namespace, but we don't have something like to ignore the folders, like source, runtime, package. And
can I suggest you come after and we discuss it?
Yeah, great, thanks.
Okay, we got about 7 minutes or so. Any other questions? Oh, yes, you, please.
Hello. Still for the scoped registries, I know right now there's a limitation for the /all.
Yes.
Is there a plan to, or, I mean, I know that some of those, for instance, like Nexus, which is the one that we are using, does not support that. Is there any plan for like to support other, or like at least if we could extend or maybe create a UI for that, because it's like just getting all the packages for at least for our team is really useful.
Yeah. So in 19.3, I think we support the V1 search NPM API. So it's just not the all packages. So it means that scope registries fetching package from Artifact Factory, for instance, will work now. But we are working right now on a paginated API. So we're going to update, have an improved search API coming in the current future release, though.
Thank you.
Hello, I've got...
Sorry. He was first. Sorry about that.
So regarding the manifest file, are you supporting exactly the same features as the package JSON for NPM?
No, not the exact same features. No, we're NPM compatible, but we're unique in the sense of we have different, we remove different restrictions, and it's more editor focused in how we modify things.
We do some manipulations to make sure that all the files are compressed properly, for example, when we do the pack. So it's just to be compatible, but we have another set of features inside of it.
Right. Thank you.
Welcome.
I've got two quick questions. If you want to contribute to a package, is there any way to get some open source thing going that you can contribute changes to other people's package?
You mean if, in a sense of a open source registry of different packages? And
like just before, someone mentioned they make changes to other people's to external packages. Can I somehow contribute them back to the official source?
Back to the official Unity source? That's a good question.
Or just to someone else packaging it?
I mean, there are open registries online as we speak. people who've created their own open source registries, likewise on GitHub. It's not something we officially manage outside of our own GitHub repositories. So technically, there's nothing blocking you from doing that, so long as you have the legal rights to redistribute the packages that you're cloning. So.
To answer about okay, the feature that we're going to add, which is developed from the Git, what it's going to do, it's going to clone from the Git repo when we have a source for a package. So that way you can just create a pull request for the creator of the package, and then you could implement your change.
Okay, perfect.
So yes.
And is there a way, if I install a package, can I just exclude some things? For instance, if I don't need examples to just avoid some space on my PC?
Samples will only get installed if you, it'll get downloaded currently, but they won't actually get installed into your project, so they won't get copied into the assets folder if you use them, if you don't click the actual import button for the samples. But no, excluding on download, we don't do that currently. We don't itemize the packages right now.
Okay.
Hey, the asset store packages right now, are they already all set up to UPM packages?
No, that's not the case yet.
I thought so.
Yeah.
Is it possible to, for now, I think it will be possible in the future, but is it possible for now to make them dependencies of certain packages?
There are certain asset store assets online that publishers already have that. What that's doing, though, is it's overriding the manifest of your project. So you could install an asset, for example, that depends on the scriptable render pipeline. It'll inject the dependency into the project manifest. That's what I want to cover.
This was fixed. There's a new pattern available for asset store publisher to set up a special file that will inject dependencies in the project manifest.
Yeah, it won't do a complete override in that case.
Right.
And
that being said, it's still not an ideal state. It's a temporary stopgap until we can get the whole publishing flow set up for third-party publishers.
Indeed, because in the other way around, if I make a custom package which has some dependencies from asset store packages,
that doesn't work.
That's not possible yet,
No.
unless I make them UPM packages.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, thank you.
Question over here, and we got 2 more minutes.
Thank you. As far as I know, semantic versioning itself has more useful agreements on how the releases can be tagged. And you seem to just support that custom preview suffix out of box. Are you planning to extend that? Because the options of just pure release and something prefixed with preview is not very handy.
We're definitely expecting, we want to clarify that, I think, because there is a certain level that preview can be something that's bleeding edge, fresh off the presses, experimental, essentially. There's a lot of conversations around how we make sure that that's clarified with everyone. It's really was done as a preview, not ready for production, generally speaking, but we know for a fact people are using it in production today. But it is not quite in a stabilized state yet. So yes, there's definitely ways we want to improve that from a supportability point of view and from a user experience clarity point of view.
Yeah, thank you, because there are more useful scenarios of how this can be.
Go ahead, we got 1 minute.
Hi. So my question is, the guys before, maybe 2 talks ago, were presenting the game foundation. So I'm wondering whether or not you are planning to introduce optional dependencies for packages. For example, if I have a module, it requires some module that will implement the cloud safe, for example. Yeah. It doesn't specify which module it will be, but it specifies that it really needs it because it won't work, right? So if you are planning to introduce the optional dependencies.
Yeah, the way we handle that today, and Boris glossed over it when we talked about assembly definitions, the version defines is how we handle that through the scripting pipeline in Unity. So you can define, using version defines, inject that optional dependency for what you're trying to include in your package.
Pascal, are we going to support development dev dependencies?
Yes, this is something we were looking to add in the future.
So maybe that's going to answer your questions, but it's it's dependencies that you have when you're in develop mode, but when you give the package to another user, it doesn't see these dependencies, basically. So this is something that we're going to add and provide in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we are over time, but it's the last session of the day, so we can continue the conversation outside. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.